Okay, I think we'll get started. I want to welcome folks to our February board voting meeting. Before we start, please rise for the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to announce we received some sad news today. Well, I guess we received it last Friday, as a matter of fact, that one of our long-term aides at Whiteton Elementary School, she was a long-time computer aide, passed away. It was Jeannie Crass. And Jeannie worked for almost 30 years in the district. She'd been ill, but we received a report from Dr. Freeze, and he indicates that she was a pleasure to work with, and she would be greatly missed. So if we could just have a moment of silence for Jeannie Crass. Thank you. So before we get into our building program report and our district growth data with Patrick Winters, I do want to take an opportunity to talk briefly about some of the comments that were made back at the workshop meeting in January. And it had to do with both the association and one of our teachers who had made some comments that required some review and investigation by our administrative team and by our legal counsel. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Mrs. Wilson, our personnel chair, to just briefly discuss where we are with that and the outcome.
At the January 14th board meeting, members of our Exeter Township Education Association addressed the school board in reference to a grievance filed against the school district in regards to board policies not being followed. We asked our legal counsel, Mr. Ellis Katz, to provide guidance as to whether our policies regarding terroristic threats and unlawful harassments were violated. Mr. Katz reported to the board that from a legal standpoint, administration did not violate our current policies. Moving forward, our policy committee has done substantial work reviewing our policies to make sure that any future concerns can be addressed in a timely and appropriate manner. Specifically, we have reviewed policy 326 titled Complaint Process and its attached administrative regulation in which district employees have the opportunity to reconcile work-related issues that are not covered by the collective bargaining agreement. And I just wanted to add something that personally, and that is that cyberbullying is a growing and complex issue, and that some people think it's okay to just sit behind a keyboard and say whatever they want about whomever they want, whether it's false or true. And I don't think that's okay. And as a school district, as parents, as families, as community, as board members, I think it's really our job to work collaboratively together to address this issue and make sure that we educate our students on appropriate digital behavior.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Board members, any other comments or questions before we move on? Dr. Winters, we're going to turn it over to you and for your report on district growth data.
Hello, hello, hello. My voice carried. So when I presented in October, I focused on the achievement data. At the time, we didn't have growth data. We didn't have SPP scores, school performance profile. We didn't have future ready PA index scores. And so I wanted to come back after we had that and give the rest of the story. And so that's what this evening is about. What we're going to focus on tonight is a review of multiple district data sources, the Future Ready PA Index, FRPAI, the PA School Performance Profile, known as SPP, and the Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System, known as PVAS. Give you some in-depth dive into those different areas, and then we'll close with some next steps related to that data. We'll start with the Future Ready PA Index. I thought it would be valuable starting out to talk a little bit about two-year comparison on some issues and some items that I think are interesting with regard to the demographics in our district, because things have changed. When you look at 2016, 2017, to 2018, 2019, our enrollment has decreased by 109 students. Our percentage of students in special education has gone up well over 1%. Our percentage of English language learners has gone up. In 16-17, we were not reporting any in homeless. That number was at 0%. Now we're at 1.4%. When you look at our ethnic breakdown over the past 2 years, our Hispanic population has gone up by over 4%. Our multiracial population has more than doubled. And then also when you look at students that are enrolled in some different programs, our number of students enrolled at BCTC has gone down a little bit, but number of students enrolled in charter schools and cyber charters has gone up. And so I think the reason that's important is that despite declining enrollment since 2016-17, a lot of the percentages of our students that have great needs continue to go up. And that impacts our instruction, that impacts the services we provide, and it's very important to understand those numbers as we talk about what we're going to discuss this evening. You look at the homeless piece alone, and we've discussed a lot at administrative and board level about trauma-informed practices, the increased mental health needs of students. Some of these things all contribute to that. The next thing that I want to take a look at is the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile. And when this first came into being, it was kind of proclaimed as the report card for school districts. That when it would come out every year, districts could look at it comparatively, compared to other schools, districts in the county where they were, and determine how quality of a district there was. It's undergone some change. It's been woven in as part of the Future Ready PA Index now, but it's still a valuable metric to look at from a comparative standpoint. And so I want to look at it and to talk about it for the different levels. So let's start with elementary. And when I'm talking elementary, I'm talking about schools that are K-4. So I'm keeping the intermediate schools out of that for a second. We'll come to that on a new slide. When we look at metrics for elementary schools in the school performance profile, basically we're being scored or assessed on two big areas. State assessment measures, percent of students proficient and advanced on PSSAs, PVAS, whether or not we meet the academic growth expectations for our students, the percentage of students that are advanced, and then on track measures as well. The percentage of all student group meeting the interim goal or improvement target, so that would be our ELLs, our English language learners. Attendance is a metric that's used on that report card. That's the percentage of the all student group exceeding the performance standard. And then early indicators of success, the percentage of the student group that's proficient on grade 3 ELA. There's a lot of research out there that demonstrates that if students aren't reading by the time they get to third grade, it has a significant negative impact on their success in school beyond that. So when we look at some of those figures, just to put some numbers there for you, with PVAS under state assessment measures, the state metric is 70. That's what they tell us to shoot for, okay? When we look at ELA, for example, at the elementary level, Jackson Wald, 84, Lorraine, 100, Awatin Creek, 100. So strong growth in our 3 K4 buildings in ELA. When we look at math, for example, we have Jackson Wald, 100% growth in math, Lorraine, 100% growth in math, Awatin Creek, 77% growth in math. So we're above that standard set for that particular item. English language learners. We only have one building where that metric is woven into the SPP score, and that's Jackson Wald, because all of our students that are English language learners attend that particular building. So that metric is not factored in for Lorraine and Awatin's school performance profile, but it is for Jackson Wald. And when we look at that metric, the statewide goal by 2030, the state is saying that 70.3% of English language learners need to have met that target. We're at 60% already, which I think is encouraging. Our number of L's keeps going up, and it's something that we're focusing a lot of energy on, and I'm very confident that we're going to get to that target. Attendance, the state performance standard for attendance is 94.1. Jackson Wald, 94.2, Lorraine, 95.8, Awatin Creek, 95.6. And all of this information is 1819. I'm sharing all 1819 information with you. And then the early indicators of success, grade 3 reading, that's a specific area where we have some work to do. Jackson Wald, 54.9, Lorraine, 59.5, Awatin Creek, 66.7. So on the next slide, what I did, because I think comparative data can be really valuable and really useful, is I gave you the 3 buildings. And I have the 17-18 SPP score versus the 18-19 SPP score, okay? And one of the things I'll point out as a real highlight in this area is you look at Lorraine. In 17-18, their SPP score was 66. They were 28 out of 55 elementary schools in Berks County. In 18-19, the SPP jumped to 77.1, 9th out of 53 elementary schools in Berks County, which I think is fantastic. And so, when we look at the scores, there, we can see that, Lorraine had that substantial increase. And I think it's also valuable, we've talked a lot about what can we learn from our peer districts in Berks County. And the districts that I have listed there, those are the districts that currently have elementary schools in the top 8 above Lorraine. So Kutztown, Twin Valley, Wyomissing, Boyertown. They have at least one, in fact Boyertown I think has 3 or 4 of them, that are in the top 8 in SPP metric 4K4 buildings. So we know some places we can go and look. Yes, Dr. McCoy.
So Lorraine had a significant increase. What did you learn about what they did that might help the other schools?
2 things jumped out. Number one, when Dr. Haller was there as principal, she really focused heavily on grade 4 science. Grade 4 science was very, very low the previous year at Lorraine. She made it a focus area. She met with teachers. She put some supports in place to improve instruction. So science score jumped significantly, so that helped it go up. And she really promoted data-informed decision making. Really sat down with her teams of teachers, showed them how to mine the data, dig into it, use it to impact instruction. So much so that the 3rd grade team, for example, at that building, they meet on their own over the summer. They can't wait till the data comes out, and they sit down and they look at it and they start action planning already. So she laid a very strong data-informed culture in that building, which caused it to go up.
Does the turnover in class matter? So your kids in one grade has moved out, another grade has moved in. Does that affect that?
It certainly can. Absolutely.
Curious to see if the grade that moved on to the junior high, if they bring the scores down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it certainly can impact things. I mean, every group of students has their own unique set of needs and different challenges, and we'll go through all the buildings here, and you'll see some of the variation there. But that's a very good point. When we look at the intermediate buildings, SPP metrics for intermediate buildings, looking at 5, 6, we see some similar items there. Still the percent proficient or advanced, and the percent meeting the academic growth expectations. The same on-track measure for attendance. And then we have a new one, college and career measures. This is something that Secretary Rivera has really emphasized in terms of having career benchmarks and making sure students have artifacts to demonstrate that they're meeting career benchmarks. And so that's something that has been woven in. A couple things to highlight with Riften. When we look at the PVAS data in particular, the growth standard in ELA is 70. Riften was at 79. For math, it's at 70. Riften was at 100%. Attendance, we were right at the state performance standards, and we had 100% meeting the career standards benchmark. And this is going to be a theme that you're going to see as we go through the presentation tonight, and it was a big reason why I wanted to come back out and talk about growth data, is because while we all have concerns about some of our achievement data, rightfully so, and it does need to improve, our growth data is amazing. And I think it indicates that what our teachers are doing is when they get students at the beginning of the year, they're moving them very far along compared to where they were at the beginning of the year towards the end. When we get into PVAS, I'll talk about colors and what dark blue means compared to what red means, and almost all of our areas are in light blue and dark blue, which is very encouraging that our kids are experiencing great growth. We just need to figure out how to pair the achievement with that. So when we do some comparisons related to intermediate buildings, Riften's SPP went up. Their rank in the county stayed the same. There are only 4 intermediate buildings in the county, so it's a small number. We remain number 2 behind Wyomissing. They're the intermediate building that is at the top over the last several years, and so maybe there are some things that we can learn from what they're doing. But Riften has been very solid and continues to grow. And again, looking at these SPP scores, we want to see them continue to go up. We want to continue to be competitive within Berks County.
By the way, I think it shoots down my theory, just so you know.
Okay. When we look at middle schools and junior high schools, again, similar metrics that we talked about, the percent proficient and advanced, the academic growth expectations. We have a new indicator of success, 7th grade math. 3rd grade reading was a success indicator for the elementary, 7th grade math for the junior high, and that same career standards benchmark. When we look at PVAS at the junior high, growth, math is 84.7, so well above that average there. We're right on par as far as attendance. The growth areas at the junior high, 7th grade math proficiency, that's only 45.4%. That's a concern. That's something that we need to continue to do some work on, as well as growth in ELA, which is only 68%, which is below the 70% threshold the state sets. And I'm going to talk more about that when we get into PVAS as well. But the growth challenges in 7 to 12 literacy are very real and something that we need to look at. So when we look at the junior high, their SPP score went up from 17-18 to 18-19. Their rank in the county dropped a little bit, middle of the pack, as far as middle schools and junior high schools are concerned. There are some districts that we can learn from. Boyertown, Ole Valley, Brandywine Heights, Schuylkill Valley, Daniel Boone, Twin Valley, Hamburg, Kutztown. The other thing that's very interesting to me, and it's another trend I think you'll see as we go through the slides, is that many of the districts that, right or wrong, we're often compared to, either because of size or programs, on these metrics, the SPP metrics and the growth measures, we're outperforming. And it's really a lot of the smaller districts that are doing some really great things related to growth and some of these SPP metrics that we can learn from. And one of the great benefits that Melissa, Andy, and I have is that once a month we get to go to BCIU for a curriculum coordinators meeting where there's a representative from every district there, and we talk about these things. What are people doing to address math issues? What are people doing to look at literacy? How are we improving growth? So they're very real conversations that happen on an ongoing basis. Yes, Mr. Aarons.
In the observation you just made, which is that some of the smaller schools are the ones that are outperforming us, especially smaller buildings. Can you maybe unpack that a little bit more and maybe give some causation to why that is? Because I'm interested by what you just said there. So,
I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a causation. I'll call it a working theory, maybe. I think to some extent, when you have smaller districts and smaller buildings, you have to prioritize how you're resourcing things financially. And so if you can't afford to provide everything you want to provide, you focus your attention on the essentials, math and ELA, and that may be at the expense of electives. So that may be one possibility. And again, that's just off the top of my head. That's a theory. I'd have to ask and have some conversations there. I know in particular, some of those districts have had a lot of stability at the curriculum director, curriculum supervisor level, and that makes a big difference as well. When you have a single person, I think of Kutztown, for example, their curriculum director has been there a long time, and they've had long-standing stability in that particular area, so that can impact things. I'm sure there are others, and I can certainly ask some of those questions. That's just off the top of my head. I haven't really done the statistical analysis. Those are just kind of some theories.
because when I hear that, I guess my gut instinct is they've learned to do more with less.
Possibly.
And
Possibly.
I think that's really, really interesting to hear. And maybe that's just a perception and that's not the reality, but I think that'd be interesting to try and unpack a little bit.
You know, the other thing too that would be, I think, a valid question to ask is how many of those districts at the elementary level have a strong, fully functioning RTII/MTSS process for both literacy, behavior, and math working simultaneously. Like, I'm fairly certain Twin Valley does. And so, you know, that may be a factor as well.
And those acronyms are
I'm sorry.
intervention for the two?
Yes,
Tiered
yes,
intervention.
yes. I'm sorry. I get caught up in education alphabet soup sometimes and forget that people, not everybody knows what those acronyms mean. But it's a good question, Mr. Ernst. It really is. When we look at high school, a lot of the assessment metrics are the same, as well as the attendance piece. What changes at the high school is you get some of these additional college and career measures that can impact what our SPP score is. You know, things like that benchmark, but high school graduation rate, 4-year and 5-year cohorts, industry-based learning, those industry credentials, CTE completers, rigorous courses of study, percentages of students taking AP or International Baccalaureate courses, post-secondary transition, percentage of our students that are graduating from high school and going into the workforce, military, or college. So all of those things impact a high school score. None of the other levels have that, so it's all insufficient information at the other levels, but they are metrics that are part of high schools. And we see some positive things happening in the high school. Our rank went up from 9 to 6. Our SPP score went up just slightly. And you can see some of the schools that are in front of us. And, you know, again, you know, 3 of them, Kutztown, Fleetwood, Hamburg, they're all smaller districts. Wilson and Boyertown are larger. So, and one theme that jumped out at me is that we've seen Boyertown listed on a lot of different slides. They've had some success at a lot of different levels. And so I think that becomes one district that we can certainly continue to ask some questions of and see what we can learn from as far as that goes. PVAS, this is your growth data. This is your Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. And for the benefit of folks that don't know PVAS, I wanted to give you a slide that outlines the colors. Dark blue is what you want. Dark blue is like the A+. That means students, buildings that are scoring in dark blue, there is significant evidence that the district or the school exceeded the standard for PA academic growth. In other words, kids are growing more than a year for a year. So if they come in to 7th grade on a 7th grade level, by the time they leave, if they're dark blue, they might be on a 9th grade level, or 3/4 of the way through their 8th grade year. So it's growing kids more than a year for a year. So, and then blue, light blue is moderate evidence, green is a year for a year, and then yellow is less than a year for a year, and red really behind. Now, the one misnomer that you have to be careful of with PVAS is it's really easy to say, well, as long as we're green, we're good. We're growing kids a year for a year. And that's not entirely true, because if every single kid were on grade level, you could use that argument. But not every kid is on grade level. Some students are 2 grade levels behind. And so in order to ensure that a high percentage of our students are growing, you want to be light blue and dark blue, because that means you're growing your kids more than a year for a year. So the metric that we use within PVAS is something called the average growth index. And that's a measure of student growth across tested grades in a district. It's a value based on the average growth across grades or within a grade and subject, and that growth's relationship to the standard error. There's a lot of statistical mathematics that goes into the PVAS calculation. I will be the first to share that I cannot explain the entire statistical formula, but it is a fully vetted and reputable formula that is used in many states in the United States, not just in Pennsylvania, as a valuable measure. So when we look at PVAS data for ELA in grades 4 to 8, we were in light blue in 17-18. We're in dark blue in 18-19. And for this particular area, we had the 3rd highest PVAS score in Berks County, behind Wyomissing and Boyertown. So good growth data in grades 4 through 8 related to ELA, dark blue. And the higher the number in a color, the stronger the growth. So 2.38 is better than 0.5. Math, grades 4 through 8, similar scenario. We were in light blue in 17-18, 1.9 in light blue. We jumped to 5.52 dark blue in 18-19. Second strongest PVAS data in Berks County for 4 to 8 math, behind Boyertown. So great growth in 4 to 8 math. Keystone literature. This is the big concern area. Melissa and I were having a pretty detailed conversation about this on the phone earlier this afternoon. And while we saw a slight improvement from 5.64 to 3.69, we're still in the red, pretty significantly in the red. And we're in the bottom, 5 of Berks County. That's a concern, no doubt. And I would say of anything on the slides that I shared tonight, this is probably, one of my biggest concerns. It's something I've talked to Melissa about in terms of a district priority, in terms of looking at, what do we need to do to improve that number. I can tell you a couple things. Number one, it doesn't mean that our teachers don't work hard. It doesn't mean that our teachers don't care. They care deeply. They're working extremely hard. There are some things we may have to look at systemically. I'll give you one example real quick. One of the hardest things at the high school level, it's really hard to motivate a student to take a Keystone exam. Okay, it doesn't affect their grade. It's not a final exam of any kind. And those of you that have teenagers know it's hard to get teenagers motivated to do something where they don't see a direct impact. So that's a real challenge. It's a real challenge for our teachers to get that motivation. Now, some things you can do with that. We could explore the idea of counting the Keystone exam as a final exam for the course. That's not something we currently do. Some districts do. That's something we could take a look at. We could also take a look at and say to a student, regardless of your grade in English 10, even if you fail English 10, if you sit for the Keystone and you get proficient or advanced on it, you're still going to pass the course. We're still going to give you credit. because the state has said that that exam is emblematic of knowledge and proficiency in that area. We don't do either of those two things currently. They're ideas. They would certainly require more discussion related, involving Melissa, Andy, senior high administration, department chairs. But that's just one thing. You think about the elementary level, elementary buildings are great about doing fun things during PSSA week. You get kids really, really excited about it. You have third graders, it's their first time taking a test. You can do some really creative things there. It's harder to motivate high school students to take an exam like this that doesn't really directly impact their grade. So,
just to confirm, so you're, because I don't know this, so it's not mandatory to take the Keystone?
it is mandatory to take it. It's
So where's
it's
the
required by the state to take it.
Okay.
And you're supposed to be proficient on it in order to graduate, but the state is even playing around with that and coming up with additional metrics to allow kids to graduate if they're not proficient on the Keystone exam.
Okay, so you're saying, but the lack of motivation to take the test,
That's a factor, for sure.
in that they're choosing to not take the test, or they're choosing to not
Just not take it seriously.
take it seriously? That's what I wanted to nail down. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
perfectly
Thanks for
fine.
clarifying that.
Because if you think about that assessment, for example, it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading of passages that in all likelihood are not topics of great interest for kids. And then you have to read it, you have to process it, and then you have to, kind of take some notes while you're reading and go back. And it's, that's a skill. And some of what Melissa and I have talked about is, to what extent are we teaching our students to be critical readers of both nonfiction and fiction texts so that they can read something and I know when I have to read something that I have to understand, I either put sticky notes in the margin and write notes on it, or I highlight or I underline, teaching students those skills, not only because they're valuable to help with the Keystone, but they're valuable in life as well. So
Endurance is an important thing.
it is.
I remember
It is.
my short answer in essays for the first question were a lot longer than they were for the second
Mhm.
question.
So there are definitely, there are definitely things that we can do. I think it's just understanding that, like the issue is not just, our teachers aren't doing the job, they got to try harder. There are some other factors that, are at play there. I know how hard our teachers are trying. We got to figure out how to support them. Yes, Dr. Hemmer.
This is just another question about our student population. Do we ever look at data associated with transiency of student permanence within the school district? Like, of the new students who start the school out, how many actually are there at the end of the school year? How many represents the students you started with? And I'm wondering if that's a metric that has any impact. I'm not saying we have a transient student population, but I know that's an issue, for instance, for Reading School District, where they do have a much more transient population. I'm just curious whether that's ever considered as a factor in this, or whether there's a metric associated with that.
I don't think there's a formal metric associated with that. I know it doesn't factor in how the state determines a PVAS score or how the state determines an SPP score. To your point, I think it would be really valuable data to know. I think it would be useful to us. I know one of the things we've talked about at the K-4 level is part of the reason we've been pushing so hard to get consistency across 3 buildings is because it's very common, it's more common now for a child to potentially start the year at Jackson Wald and finish at Lorraine, or start at Lorraine and finish at Awatin. So, maybe not so much moving out of district, but we also have transiency within the district, moving from buildings to building. And so that having that consistency K-4 really matters. But I know looking at the enrollment reports that we get every single month, we can see how our enrollment is shifting, and we probably could dig a little deeper and get some additional information there. It's not something I've done, but I definitely see the value.
Well, it's not a metric that helps you do anything. You can't control it.
Right.
It is what it is. I'm just curious because I have a feeling that the more transient a student population is, the impact, you will have more of an impact on your performance, because these are kids you haven't educated previously. These kids may have come in, or kids you've lost along the way, and I think it can have an impact.
I think it's a great point. And the other piece that goes along with that is that we know that, students like to take time to build relationships with their teachers. And so if I'm in one district until January and I build a great relationship with my English 10 teacher, and all of a sudden I move into Exeter and I don't know my teacher and they don't know me, it takes time to build that relationship again, and kids work harder when they feel like they have a strong relationship with the teacher that's teaching them.
Yeah, there is also an attribution window towards the end of the year where we're looking at students that belong to Exeter that have been here for the majority of the year with that teacher. So we go through a process, sort of a push-pull process with districts that are sending and receiving, so that, you know, in the situations of transiency, if the student really doesn't have a majority of their time here, we do move that to the district that's receiving or sending or wherever they took their assessments. So there is a process. It's not, probably doesn't answer the question, but for those students that are moving and transient, there is sort of a process for accounting as to where they end up.
So we don't take credit for those students who we didn't educate, in other words.
True. In terms of Keystone Algebra 1, I'm sorry, biology, sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. Biology, our PBAS score stayed in the dark blue, but it stayed the same, 2.22 to 2.2. In terms of our rank within Berks County related to PBAS Keystone Biology, 6 out of 16. You know, similar mixture of districts there. 4 of them are small: Kutztown, Fleetwood, Wyomissing, and Hamburg. When we jump to Algebra 1, 6.91 was our PBAS score in the dark blue for Keystone Algebra 1 for 18-19. It was 6.21 the year before. Number 2 out of 16 districts in Berks County for Keystone Algebra 1 PBAS, behind Twin Valley. So, you know, I think what all of this says is that, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think when you look at district data, it's very, very easy to dwell on the aspects of the data that are concerning, and we certainly don't want to ignore those. And we know between the achievement presentation in October and this presentation tonight that we certainly have things to work on: math proficiency, growth in 712, you know, ELA. And I'm not trying to minimize that or diminish that in any way, but I think it's also important to celebrate some of the amazing things that we are doing. And the growth of our students is pretty incredible. And that's a testament to the job the teachers are doing in the buildings. That's a testament to the jobs the principals are doing to create a culture and an environment for kids to learn. So when they enter classrooms, they are growing. They're leaving better than when they enter the year. And I think that's cause for celebration. You know, we have a number of different areas where we're right in the top tier of districts in Berks County, and I think that's great.
So it begs the question, how are we celebrating this with our teachers?
So it's a great question. I think for me, I saw this presentation as kind of step one of that process. When I presented in October, I got some feedback. I heard from some teachers that were kind of discouraged, that had said, gosh, you know, you shared all this achievement data and, you know, it looks like, you know, we're not doing our jobs and achievement data is not good. And I said, just kind of wait a minute. I said, there's going to be an opportunity second half of the year. I'm going to share the growth data, chance publicly to, you know, talk about how strong that is. So I think that's step one. But to your point, I think there are definitely some other things that we can do, whether it's, I'm trying to think of, I mean, we could certainly and should put something on the website that conceptualizes all this data and, you know, celebrates the good. I think that's important. I think just a general email to the staff in each of the buildings that I could send and copy the principal to just say, you know, hey, you know, thanks for the great job you're doing. Here are some things we need to highlight. We can continue building from there. One of the good examples of that actually happened earlier in the year was junior high math took the data presentation in October very personally and kind of reached out to me specifically. I was able to have a conversation with Mr. Flam about it, you know, and I thought, you know what, like I don't want these folks to get discouraged. I took a few minutes, just sent the math department an email, copied Mr. Flam and said, hey guys, you know, I know you're frustrated with the achievement data. I love what I'm seeing in growth. Keep up the good work. Down to a math teacher, every single one responded to me and said, thanks for your email. I appreciate it. It meant a lot. So I think, you know, that's something that only takes a couple of minutes, but I think, you know, from a teacher's perspective, when somebody at district office recognizes that the hard work that they're doing is paying off and paying dividends instructionally, I think that goes a long way. So I think that's something too that I would want to do.
I mean, I know that we spoke last week around the public relations policy or approach or process or whatever, but, you these are the things that, portend good things, or success. But I can promise you that there's probably 1% of our population that ever heard of PFAS, let alone knew what it means.
Right.
So, as an educational institution, I think that our public relations has to revolve around educating our stakeholders in our community as well around some of these issues, and taking some time to educate them, and not putting always. I mean, being honest. I think you were honest tonight. We put up numbers here that one number in particular that didn't show up, but I think just part of bringing people along, this kind of a presentation. I mean, I don't. Other than Mr. Hepp back there and our reporter, I don't see another person, and our cameraman, I don't see another person in the room who's, going to have access to this unless they sort of actively look. So maybe we need to sort of
Put it out there.
Just push it.
We can certainly put the PowerPoint on the website with an explanation as to what PFAS means, what the data looks like, where we're comparing to other districts and why.
And just some narrative. I mean, I think some narrative to help them just kind of work their way through it. Because I just think it's a good story. I mean, we hear a lot of we deal with a lot of the negative things that come before the board, and I think there's a lot of good things. And we're not trying to whitewash anything. We're just trying to present sort of a balanced.
We're also being transparent.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, I was on the PD website today looking at some of the actual data and some of the documents, and there were some really excellent tools on there for evaluating and comparing one district to another, one school to another, understanding the data, understanding what it means. I think if we had a link to the PDE site that allows us to access not only our scores, but to see what the scores look like across the state, and then actually understand what these data really represent. I think that would be a value and a service to our community members who want to actually see that information.
Well, and I think that's a great point, because there is a public PBAS site where you just go to the site and it says, I'm a community member, and you just click on it, and you can go in and go to the search feature, type in any school district in Pennsylvania that you want to type in, and you can see their PBAS data.
That's what I was on today. And you can set school district
Right,
by school district,
right,
and
you can.
and you can target data, and I think you can learn a lot by that. And then, it is what it is. I mean, it's not. Sometimes it's sort of competitive. It looks great. Sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, I think it's important for us to look at it objectively and square in the eye and approach it where we have to.
We'll work with Mr. Wade. We'll put a nice package together.
I'm curious on if there's a way that we can kind of make it into to put some skin in the game to the students, maybe like challenge each, like for literature, maybe each English teacher will have a challenge between the classes, say who has the best lit score or something, if you take this test, we'll get a pizza party or something, or even the clash between the three elementary schools. Who has the best lit score, and we'll give them some kind of award or something to kind of maybe generate some more fervor into these tests, to say, because you do it for the other scores, so on the other testing, why can't we just have something that kind of
You're talking about the PSSAs.
Right.
Because the growth scores are impressive.
Right. But maybe some kind of way to just kind of get them an incentive, like the lit teachers and everybody, to kind of just make sure this is pushed further, so we can definitely get our scores up.
Just as a way to quickly wrap up, I think when you talk about data, none of it really matters unless you can kind of drill it down to, okay, so now we have all of this, what do next steps look like? And some of these things are happening, some of these things will be happening, but I just wanted to highlight them real quick. Curriculum alignment, that's ongoing work, both in literacy and in math and other subject areas as well. Strategic scheduling, we're in the process of taking a look at elementary schedules. Common assessments, in particular in math, that's a major need area right now. I know Andy is already starting to travel down that road. Multi-tiered system of supports, as we mentioned at the curriculum committee last week, principals and Melissa and Andy and I met on Friday to begin to have that conversation and what next steps look like there. Title I school-wide plans. Next year, Jackson Wald and Lorraine, we're going school-wide Title I instead of targeted assistance. The reason that's going to be a benefit is because when you go school-wide, the federal dollars that you have for that building, you can use for any child in the school, whether or not they formally qualify for Title I or not. So that's huge. And so we'll be able to use those dollars to benefit every kid at Jackson Wald and every kid at Lorraine, as opposed to that targeted group. An improved understanding of the PSSA blueprint and test design, and a review of our universal screening benchmarks, looking at STAR, does that make sense? Is CDT a better option? That type of thing. So I apologize, I took longer than I probably wanted to. Dr. Phillips will probably tell me that tomorrow. But I'm really passionate about this stuff and I love talking about it.
I'm giving them books. You can hear me for the last hour.
But are there any other questions or comments?
Concise? No.
You know, by way of wrap up. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, Dr. Winters. Nice job.
Yep.
This period of time in our agenda for public comments. Anyone like to make a comment relative to items on the agenda or any other matters that are applicable to the board?
Public
Time. Good. Okay, we'll move on then. A reminder to board members, this will be a consent agenda this evening. For the rest of the agenda, we'll be approving each of the areas using the consent format, where we group together items under a single motion. If anyone has a concern about any of the items, if they believe they'd like to have more discussion, simply indicate that before the vote, and we'll remove it, have some discussion, and vote separately on any of these items. First items on the agenda are the minutes, and it's recommended the board approve the minutes for the January workshop and voting meetings. Second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report. It's recommended the board of directors approve the treasurer's report from January, as well as the payment requests for the same period. Second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Board policy, we've got policies for second reading, which means final approval, other policies for first reading, and then we have two policies that are marked for deletion. Would anyone like to remove any of those policies for further discussion off of the consensus vote?
So Dave, I know in the last meeting, I did not get around the marking of the concerns that I had, that they were only in first reading, so I still have to do that.
We did move that actually, Mike, from second reading to first readings, so we could have more time. Okay, it's recommended that the board approve policies numbered 1 through 13 and deleted policies 14 and 15. Second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I just wanted to make a comment. I did send an email out about the administrative regs. They are deadline to be for the next workshop session. So all the administrative groups that have those ARs are going to be working on them and have them in to Donna.
Thank you. Business functions, Mr. Aarons.
So, looking at this ahead of time, I just want to separate out number 9. Does anybody else have anything that they want separated out of this? It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following business functions items: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Can I just say the motion on number 1 should be in Pat Pease's honor. She's been a proponent of the propane, so
Second.
for the minutes.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following business functions. Item number 9, attached resolution calling for charter school funding reform.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so I really went back and forth on this. I'm not going to be voting for this. I personally feel that it is steeped in a lot of political work. I do not object to the idea that we would call upon the General Assembly to meaningfully revise charter school funding systems. Listening to a lot of some of the education that Bob and Ann have been willing to share with me has been helpful. But I kind of read between the lines here, and I don't think that this is calling for that. I think that this is really calling for a fundamental overhaul to the point where the state takes all the burden of charter school funding and they don't run it through districts at all. And I'm not really sure that I'm on board with that. And I just think that that's something that I would need to process a lot more. Because I think we can't view these types of recommendations from an Exeter lens as well as a statewide lens. And I'm just not sure that that's good statewide. The other thing that I really took issue with in here is it says something that is explicitly wrong, which I thought was, I frankly thought it was laughable. And it says, whereas the cost of charter schools for school districts continue to grow significantly each year, and on a statewide basis are the most identified source of pressure on school district budgets. I don't understand how anybody could identify charter school funding before PSERS sponsored grades on budgets regularly. And it is laughable, I think, because there seems to be more interest in doing anything related to charter school funding and trying to get it out of districts' pockets than there has ever been in reforming PSERS and the system of pensions that are provided to education professionals. And I don't begrudge anybody for having a pension. I am paying into one right now, but I just don't understand how this is so much of a bigger issue than the ones that actually cost the most money. So I will be voting no on this.
Is there any other discussion? Yeah, I'd just like to say that, I mean, a lot of the items in here really do relate to the governor's proposed budget and some of his goals, which are really to kind of bring some sensibility in terms of the funding for charter schools, cyber charter schools especially. In this particular case, what we're seeing are costs that even under the governor's proposed plan are probably 3 times as high as any costs associated with the operation of cyber charters that we would incur as a school district if we operated the program ourselves. And the other thing that really is far, way out of line is the special education costs that take no consideration into whether or not the student is in possession of an IEP that is minimal, such as a speech IEP, versus a student with a more involved IEP. The construction of the legislation associated with this and the abuse over time, and it's been a long time that this has been identified and unfair to school districts, is just been far too long. So this is the one opportunity that we can really, I think, as advocates for public education and advocates for some relief, to our folks in our communities, to be able to kind of bring some sensibility to it and take away some of the abuses that have occurred with cyber funding that have resulted in our annual need to continue to raise taxes.
It's really a fair funding issue.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't think this is saying that this should be that we're not recommending necessarily an elimination of charter cyber schools, but it's a fair funding that we're looking for. And it is, if it's not the most important item, it's one of the items that is almost always, identified as within at least the top 3, for school districts. So I think it's an important, resolution, and it's important for school districts to speak up and be advocates for public schools. Are there any other discussion?
I'll just say it is a very political topic. In the end, my only concern with any of this has been the expenditure of tax dollars without any transparency.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
There's one opposed. Motion passes 7-1. Thank you, Mr. Aaron's. Personnel Committee, Mrs. Wilson.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items, 1 through 7. I'm going to take off 8 for right now.
Second. Any discussion?
I do have, I reached out to all, we have four people that are retiring from our district. So I reached out to each of them because I really do appreciate all the work that they've done and been in our district for a long time. So I want to start with Dr. Miller. She's retiring, and actually Dr. Miller hired me back in 2015 for a short-term role at the high school, and I had never taught at a high school before, and I greatly appreciate all of her encouragement and expertise, so thank you. But she actually started a second career in the field of education over 20 years ago, and she started as a special education learning support aide at Daniel Boone, and then went on to be a special education teacher at Boyertown, and then administrator at Potts Grove School District, and then transferred to Upper Perk to be the director of special education. And then 7 years ago, she came to Exeter as the director of special education, and then when Don Kramer retired, she took on the role of director of pupil services. And in her words, she said, "I'm excited to retire so that I have more time with my husband and family to travel and pursue hobbies. I'm also looking forward to returning to part-time reading, tutoring, and volunteering in our community." So thank you.
Sorry, and it was just like that. I think that the most important compliment you get is you always put kids first. And I think that's something that Dr. Miller has shown in all the time that I've been with her and the other times that she's been here. So again, the most compliment is she's always put children first.
Mrs. Deb Bittler is also retiring from Owatin Creek, and she has been an elementary teacher for at least 38 years when I tried to add it all up, and the past 35 years she's been at Exeter as a 5th grade teacher, an instructional support teacher, and a reading specialist. And she wrote, "Over the years I've been on numerous committees, held leadership positions, done staff presentations, helped to select superintendents, supervisors, and principals. And after nearly 40 years, I think I'm eternally woven into the fabric of Exeter. I am blessed to have touched the lives of the best children and spend my career doing something I loved in a place I loved." Mrs. Mary Jo Smith is retiring from the high school. She's been a teacher for 25 years, spending the last 22 years at Exeter High School. She has also held the positions of Fall Play Director, Y-Teens Advisor, and National Honor Society Advisor. And in her words, with her retirement, this is what she wrote. "For the past 6 years, my husband and I have been working with people experiencing homelessness with the Hope Rescue Mission in Reading, and my plans immediately after retirement are to see that work through by co-chairing the Hope Rescue Mission banquet in October 2020, and as a member of the Advisory Council for the Lighthouse at Hope Rescue Mission, which will be the first Come As You Are Women with Children's Shelter. It has been my pleasure and honor to teach in the same school district where I attended school and where I have had so many fond memories." And finally, this one is really hot off the press. I just printed it out before I left home, so I didn't really even get to read it yet, but I'm going to read it. It's Mrs. Terry Fiddler from Owatin Creek. She'll be retiring. She wrote, "She started special education as an elementary learning support teacher fresh out of college during the 1979-1980 school year in a very small school in Manchester outside of York. This is where she met her husband, Joe, who was already employed there as a 6th grade teacher. They worked there for 3 years until Joe introduced me to the Exeter area and the homestead he and his brother were raised in. I quickly fell in love with Exeter area and taught another 3 years until we started our family, all 3 who are Exeter and university graduates. While raising her children, volunteering, sports clubs, band parent, painting, scenery for 18 years, she also worked as a special education student needing extensive academic support on a part-time basis for Exeter. And then upon that student's graduation, she was hired to teach full-time elementary learning support at Jacksonville, and now at Owatin Creek for the last 17 years. She says, "It truly feels like yesterday that I interviewed and how exciting it was to set up a classroom again and build relationships with students and their families. We are hoping to have more time with our family, including grandchildren who will live and grow to be Exeter grads. It has been a privilege and honor to have been given the opportunity to grow as a professional and on a personal level with colleagues, families, and students through the years. Thank you.
I would like to give Mrs. Wilson a hearty congratulations for doing that. I think that was kind of cool. And I was the chair for 2 years and did not do that on personnel. Now I regret not having done that.
I think we should do that all the time. I think that's great, and thanks for taking the time to do that. That's outstanding.
Very interesting to see how long they've been here until the daytime.
Yeah. And Dr. Miller, you're the only one of the retirees here, but I also want to extend my thanks as a former Pupil Services Administrator. I know how hard the work is. I know how hard you've worked. I want to thank you for all the work you've put in, and we're going to miss your dedication and your commitment to excellence in students.
I do want to touch quick on Mrs. Smith. I had Mrs. Smith as my 10th grade English teacher, and I was actually talking about this with a couple of the girls that I go to church with, who also had Mrs. Smith and were equally as touched by her as I was. And she had a unique ability, I think, to have really had a lasting impact on a lot of students, including myself. And just one story that I thought was so cool, and it's the first one that I think of with her. We were doing some type of play, I think, for Romeo and Juliet, and we were doing a reenactment of it. And we had a vote for the people who would be Romeo and Juliet. And it was pretty obvious to most people in the class, but the girl who was Juliet was somebody that I was very interested in. So she got it pretty easily. And then when we put our heads down, I'm pretty sure that Mrs. Smith rigged the vote so that I could be Romeo in the reenactment. And that always stuck with me because that was a really clutch move. I'm probably getting red talking about that. I don't know if she remembers that, but I certainly do. And there were many other things in that class that just stuck with me for a long time. I just am very appreciative of her and many of the other teachers that I had that have retired at this point or will in the future. So congratulations to her, and I'm excited that she's going to be moving on and doing some more stuff with Hillcrest English as well.
So with all that, I forget where we are now, all right? We have had an opportunity for discussion.
Yeah, 1 through 7.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I'm just going to probably have to abstain on one, even though this happened already, because my wife happens to be listed there, so.
Which one are you going to say?
Number 1.
Number 1.
Sure.
So,
Oh, I see, the conferences.
number 2. Okay.
Sorry. We have paperwork to fill out for extensions.
Well, I wonder if we can have a standard paper where we just submit it whenever it applies.
No vote, I don't care, I can vote no.
Tell her she can't
I think I already happened already.
Okay, with the exception of Mr. Japina, that number 1. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed, any abstentions? We have 1 abstention. Motion carries, thank you.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Number 8, the updated job description for Director of Pupil Services.
Any discussion?
Number second.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of discussion on email about this role, and one thing that I just wanted to say in this is Dr. Miller does a job daily, or many times per week, I'd say, multiple days per week, in her role with the nurses, with calling for substitutes. And I feel that any role that you do that consistently requires work before normal working hours should be listed in a job description. Other people disagree, but I just want to put that out there because I think it's important.
And I flagged that a little bit myself too, because I was somewhat surprised that was a function of this position and not executed by someone more than maybe in a clerical role or HR role. So I'm wondering how that ever evolved and why that's done. by one of our cabinet members.
Well, I would not ask any of my secretarial staff to take calls throughout the night or take calls or text in the morning. I mean, I can get a call from our nursing agency that somebody's just called out at 11 o'clock at night during the Super Bowl. I'm talking to one of my nurses because she was going to be out. I had last Tuesday, I couldn't be here because I had to attend a meeting in Gwinnett area, and my husband's sitting next to me, and I get a text from the nurse that was supposed to be in the next day that she's sick with the flu. A lot of flu's been going around, and he just leans over to me, nursing again? I'm like, nursing again. And so it's just, this is how I do my job for the district. We used to, years ago, when I took this over, I shouldn't say years ago, it's not that many years, but several years ago, we used the same the system the teachers used, which is going on, and putting in, I'm going to be out sick. Well, what happens is you don't find a nurse is going to be out. You don't find out a nurse is going to be out until practically you walk in the door. We can't have that. We have so many children that are so sick in our schools these days with diabetes and asthma and all kinds of medical conditions. I need to know we have nurses staffing our buildings the minute the doors open, if at all possible. People have to get moved. I have to notify principals, notify our subs. And so this is just how I do my job. My secretary keeps thank God for technology. We have a schedule on my calendar of who's scheduled, who our nurses are, if there's anybody extra anywhere. And then I can pull it up at 5 o'clock in the morning if I need to find out who's going on. And then I typically wait till 5:30 to email some staff if people have to be moved. But that way it ensures that we have nursing staff when our doors open, whether it's 7:30 in the morning till, when the elementary school's open, around 9 o'clock. And we rarely miss, and it's quite a job some days to get it all done.
Yeah, I don't deny, I think it's a challenging job, and I just am not so certain whether or not the next person that comes in, whether that's going to be an expectation of that person in the same way it was for you. I think you've assumed that responsibility. But
whether it goes over to HR because it does, I think, fall under staffing, that's not my decision.
I don't know. Mrs. Miller, do you have any thoughts about this in terms of?
Well, I'm really surprised because the job description that you had given us, like for Kathy Cardoli, in there she lists that she does like all the scheduling off hours and takes texts and phone calls. So I was just a little surprised by that. Mm-hmm.
Well, when you have an hourly staff person picking up that job versus a salaried person, I mean, that wouldn't that require the payment of overtime or the time and a half or whatever that ends up being? Because I know the salaried staff, there is the expectation that you're essentially on call 24/7. But if we were to move that to somebody at an hourly level, that brings another issue to the table.
Yeah, but
I guess my question is,
I see though she has
she
takes the comp time. I know Kathy takes a lot of comp time.
I don't think this is a place to discuss that.
Okay.
What do we do with all the other staff when there's an absence? Why wouldn't it fit right into the existing system?
Well,
having our existing subservice, accommodate the same.
Oh, the frontline.
frontline.
Isn't that
Okay.
what we use that
And
service
then-
for right now?
Frontline, and that's pretty much managed by the building principals and, their scheduling secretaries.
Are there any other administrative support who do what Dr. Miller does right now in terms of?
Well, just the subsystem, I guess, like the front line where we have our substitute teachers, but other than that, I can't think of anything else.
On a daily basis, on a weekly basis, our principals don't get up early in the morning to address substitute situations.
Yeah, I'm sure maybe there's times they do. I think Frontline takes care of a big part of that, but there may be situations where they do have to get involved, I believe, from time to time. And I can double check on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think, part of what we were trying to do is, upgrading this and kind of clarifying this job description for, in anticipation of a new person coming in and obviously having a clean job description so that we can clearly articulate what the demands of the job are.
Just also let you know, when I took the job over from Don, Don's system was different. Don waited till he came in the morning to find out where where there were nurses were not in, and then he started making phone calls to get subs to come in.
Did the requirements around nursing change though in terms of having to have a presence or a certified nurse? I mean, is that, I don't know if that's different or not, it just seems to me that there was quite a shortage of nurses in terms of.
There is a shortage of
trying to
nurses. Yeah, there is a shortage of nurses, yeah.
So, I just wonder, sometimes you have more juice as a member of cabinet calling people around than you do if you're.
Well, we just lost 2 subs you've all approved recently. We just lost them. 2 of our part-time nurses we lost, which was a shame. We have a nurse out on a long-term medical leave right now, one of our CSNs at the high school, and then we have, a week or 2 in between where we have another one of our regular nurses out for another leave, and then managing all that in between. Then people got the flu, and then our agency nurses. Last week was really fun.
There's not a lot of school nurse programs out there. They're dwindling to the point where I don't even know if there's any local colleges and universities that offer the school nursing.
Not too many, yeah, not too many, but not too many people going to school nursing. We work really hard to make sure that when our principals are very, very appreciative. They know, they hear from me, they know I communicate with them, they know who's going to be on base when they walk in the door for their students, because students are at the nurse's door immediately. And as you've heard over the years, the diabetic population has shifted. Lorraine had all of her diabetics for a while. Well, right now, a lot of diabetics are up at junior high, but they also are spread out throughout the district, along with many other situations. We had a student who had to be medevac down to CHOP last week. We have students who come in with extreme medical conditions, little ones that shouldn't need to have hip replacement surgery in first grade, and other one. I mean, it's just amazing because of my knowledge of all the kids that we serve, all the medical conditions that are in our buildings that our little ones and older children are dealing with and have to come to school, and our nurses support them amazingly. So we work it out. Every day. Some days this past week I was holding my breath, but we also always have, people know me, I have Plan B and Plan C, always worked out. So if we are like near the edge of not having staffing, everybody knows what Plan B is tomorrow. So if I call you and say we're on Plan B, they know exactly where they're going and what the moving parts are, because life isn't always Plan A. But again, that is how I do my job. I don't know how it's going to be done.
Well, I guess my thought is that, I would like the administration to kind of decide whether or not they anticipate or expect that the next person in this position would be assuming that same responsibility.
I would be under the assumption that the new person will take another tack from doing this and probably assign it to someone.
Or use the current service that we...
The current service that we have.
Okay. So, if we would approve this job description, it would be, I guess, we would also recognize that it can be updated or changed at any future board meeting to incorporate. And I can appreciate that this is an ongoing, regular, day-to-day kind of responsibility. I can appreciate that should be included. That particular component should be included in the job description, because I can. Folks that feel about that. But I would suggest just to kind of move this forward for the benefit of us, having interviews and being able to articulate the position, and then whatever comes out of that, future review or discussion could be added to it.
And then there is some question there about how you would handle nursing in the process.
Okay.
So, as Sue moves into retirement and we might not have a candidate identified in that period, who's going to be responsible for this part of that job?
At this point, we just got clarification on what the process is like.
Okay.
That process is now starting. After probably the next 2 weeks, we'll have to have a plan in place on how we're going to cover. That'll be the next step. That will involve both the city department as well as other people to cover.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Student functions, Mr. Stratt.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following student functions items, items 1 through 5.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, so I think we can move then into committee reports. And we'll start out with the athletic committee, Mr. Trevino.
Thank you. I have an update from Mr. Legath. But first, I would like to acknowledge the bocce ball team for their win against Brandywine Heights. The next match is home tomorrow, February 19th at 4 o'clock against Hamburg.
And it is the 25th of next month is the county championships we'll be hosting as well.
Is that March?
Yes.
March.
Yeah, that's going to be a big to-do. We have the 4 teams, grade A, Reading, Hamburg, and then Brandywine Heights coming together with our, with our team, and the winner gets to go to Hershey for states. And we have a good team. We swept Brandywine Heights the last time out, so we're looking for the continued success.
I just want to say, I watched them practice the other day. They are so proud of themselves, and we're having such a blast. And I'm so bummed out. I didn't even know we had this game here at the school.
Well,
and they need more publicity. So
we need that. We need crowds. But the other thing is and I said this to everyone. The Brandywine Heights students were kind of there with each other. Our kids were so great. I mean, the integrated team was purely integrated. They were talking to each other, they were hugging each other. The coaches can't do anything. She has to sit at the scorer table. So the only coaching comes from the integrated members. And they were fantastic. And if anybody got to see, I had a little bet going on with the superintendent for Brandywine Heights. And the losing superintendent had to take a picture with the winning team. So I was able to post all our guys with the superintendent, who's a good guy from Brandywine Heights, as we won. So we get spoils, the victor goes to spoils.
I would also like to announce before I get into the court and mat sports that the Quiz Bowl team took home another victory today at BCIU, and I think they are one step away from qualifying for the districts. And so congratulations to them. And Mr. Legath's report, the boys basketball team has improved this year. They're now 13-9. They were 9-12 this time last year. Girls basketball is 10-12. They were 8-14 last year. 3 boys and girls advanced to District 3 tournament this weekend for bowling. That will be in Mountain Joy. 10 boys and girls advanced to the Eastern Regional on February 28th. 12 boys and girls advanced to District 3 competition next week in Cumberland Valley. For swimming, that's double the number that we had that qualified last year. We had quite the big swim team this year with the additional lines. Yeah, and that seemed to go really well. Wrestling, 7 wrestlers advanced to this weekend's District 3 tournament in Spring Grove this past weekend. Exeter won the District 3A sectional individual tournament. 3 boys and girls advanced to the state championship at State College on February 29th for indoor track. And yesterday we learned that one of our baseball players is going to continue his career at the University of Pennsylvania. So congratulations to Mrs. Wilson and Asa Wilson for sending an athlete to the Ivy League. Congratulations. That's the end of my report.
I will say that I was there for the thousands point of Alex Javier. I thought that was very exciting. His family was really excited, and I'd say that's a good thing for our school district to see a player like him that was on basketball as well as football to be able to get a 1,000-point score. It was exciting. It was definitely energized the area for that. I thought it was great.
And quite a student athlete as well, who was also furthering his college education at Carnegie Mellon.
Thanks, Mr. Chapino. Business Functions Committee, Mr. Aarons.
So I have a little bit here, and I'm going to try and go through it fast because we all know that I could definitely not go through it fast. We're working on finalizing a timeline for the rest of the year's budget process, and in that timeline, which is the biggest piece that we still have to unravel, is doing a public town hall. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, what the purpose for that is, but we're looking sometime in the April to May range right now. The administration is meeting regularly right now to work on the budget reductions through the stakeholder meetings that we had, as well as just the normal budget formulation process. We're working to identify areas of excess spending, which was the subject of our meeting this evening, for business functions, and the administration is going to start working deeper on that to understand some of the disparities that we're seeing in our staffing ratios especially. So that's something that they're going to be looking at to see if there's more story behind that we need to understand moving forward. We also had a presentation from Joe Way in the technology department tonight, and one of the highlights of that was that they have reduced their budget by about $250,000, which is a really big portion of the way that we set out in our budget goals, and I think there may be a tiny bit more movement there that may be coming later through the administrative oversight of that process, but that's a big piece, and I was really, really happy to see that. Some of the other things that I just want to touch on, the broad stroke of our plan right now, and if there's any feedback for this, definitely let me know now or email me afterwards. The broad stroke plan for the board taking on this budget reduction process once the administration hands it over is that they're going to present to us, probably looking at early April and through April, what those budget reduction recommendations are going to be. And what that is really going to entail is the first crack that we're probably going to have at it, and we still need to finalize some of these details yet, but I'll update you guys as soon as I know what they are, is that we're going to have some type of discussion where we're going to get a presentation from the administration, and we're going to have the ability to process that and ask questions about that and understand it. Then we'll have a follow-up to that where we'll try and unpack that for ourselves and try to give some direction within that and discuss it amongst ourselves, what we're comfortable with, what we want to change, etc. We'll have probably an opportunity at the voting meeting to follow up on that in April to see if there's any final pieces. And then the idea is that when we move to that public town hall, either late April, early May, that town hall will be the opportunity where the board has kind of adopted this working draft. I want to emphasize that it's a working draft because we don't make the decision until June. We'll adopt that working draft as the board's working draft and present that to the community and gain feedback. If the reductions are significant, that could be a really important piece to hear what the community's reaction is, especially if there are cuts that are going to be unpopular. So that's really the plan as it stands right now. Once we go through that town hall process, we'll continue to update, and we'll continue to update numbers and do projections for us through the remainder of the year. But we're making progress. I think we've identified some areas where we're going to look deeper. And I think that we're starting to sketch out a longer-term plan for some of these longer-term discussions that we're going to have that go past this year's budget. And there's more to be done on all those areas. I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point for me, or if you want to email me if you have questions too. I'm happy to answer. I'm sure Ian and Bob are happy to answer as well if you have any for us now.
More to come.
More to come.
Thank you, Mr. Aarons. Curriculum Committee, Dr. McClellan.
So it's recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following curriculum programs, curriculum items in item 1 and 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Anything else to do?
Well, this week, the curriculum committee met last Tuesday, February 11th. And for part of the meeting, Ms. Wallet, she finished her presentation from the previous meeting where she talked about the math goals and reviewed areas of growth and action plans to be able to meet those goals. And then the remainder of the meeting was about the changes in the course of studies that we just voted on. So next meeting is March 10th at 6, right before the workshop meeting. That's it.
Thanks, Dr. McClendon. Facilities Committee, Mr. Fickler's not here. Anybody want to report out on the Facilities Committee? Mr. Miller, anything you want to say?
Nothing as of right now. I think we're trying to get some plans on maybe doing some visits to a couple of sites for the possible bus location areas, but that was about it. And really, we're kind of in stalemate right now, trying to figure out what we're going to do in terms of working on what's next.
Thank you. Personnel Committee, Mrs. Wilson.
Nothing this time.
No report, thank you. Policy Committee, still plugging away, otherwise no report. Student Functions Committee, Mrs. Stratton.
I just want to start by saying that Over the Fence group will be meeting this Thursday at 1 o'clock. We welcome community board members to attend that. And I do have a report which I'm super excited about. Can't take any credit for it though. Anne actually put this together. Her and I met and we had felt like this would be a great idea to kind of point out some of the accolades that are going on in the school that aren't necessarily athletics, kind of some other things, although there are some athletic type events in here. But thank you, Anne, for putting this together. I just get to be the one to read it, and I apologize if I butcher any names, and it's long, so I'm going to do my best to go quick, but it's good stuff. So we would like to extend the following acknowledgements regarding student achievement for the month of February. We want to wish good luck and much success to our students raising money through Mini-Thon on March 6th and 7th. Congratulations to the students that participated in last week's mock trial competition at Northampton County Courthouse. They will be moving on. Congratulations to the Exeter Technology Student Association, or TSA Club, for their participation and success at the Regional Academic Challenge in Strasburg, Pennsylvania on Saturday, February 1st. There were 14 high schools that competed, and we took first place in software development, second place in forensic science, second place in video game design, third place in CAD 3D, third place in scientific visualization, and third place in webmaster. Overall, the team had numerous top 10 finishes with 25 students that participated. They now will be moving on to states. Congratulations to the 26 students that participated on National Signing Day that was held February 5th at the high school. Congratulations to the Exeter cheerleaders who competed in Florida the weekend of February 8th and were named top 3 at ICU World School Championships. Varsity received 6th in the nation, and JV got 10th in the nation for UCA Nationals. That's a really hard competition. Exeter Township Senior High School Theater presents Mamma Mia. Showtimes are March 12th, 13th, and 14th at 7 p.m. Toiletry donations will be accepted at every performance for the Exeter Food Pantry. This is where hopefully I say these names correct. Congratulations to Emily Holiday, viola, and Brandon Rovins, cello, for their participation in the PMEA District 10 Orchestra Festival, which was held at Wilson High School. Brandon will be advancing to the Northeast Region Orchestra Festival in March. The Exeter Youth Cheerleader or football cheerleaders, the 8 and under girls placed first in 2 different cheer competitions, Garnet Valley Cheer Challenge and Schuylkill Valley Panther Invitational, and 10 and under at Garnet Valley received 2nd place, and the 12 and under received 3rd place. The 10 and under and 12 and under girls cheer teams both received 1st place at Schuylkill Valley Panther Invitational. The children who participate in this event are from all 3 of the elementary schools and Rifton. And this past weekend, they also had a competition. The under 8 and under got 1st, 10 and under got 3rd, and 12 and under got an honorable mention. JP Mascaro and Sons Respect Poster Contest. Ella Redinger got the grand prize. Lions Club Poster Contest. She also got 2nd. It says Nature of Novelty Art Contest. Rachel Donashay 1st. PennDOT School Bus Safety Poster Contest. Peyton Walder 2nd place. And this is another name, I apologize. Leanne Moza got 3rd place. These people need to come and we need to meet them, and then we'll know how to say their names. So I'm sorry, I apologize. And then the final one is a grant amount of $500 has been approved for the Exeter Township School District from the Berks County Association of School Retirees Scholarship and Grant Fund of Berks County Community Foundation. This grant is to be used for the paper circuits traveling kit. So thank you, Anne. Maybe you should read it next time. You can probably read it better than me.
Thank you, Ms. Stroud.
And one
And
last
Ann.
thing about that, I'm sorry. The student forum is March 6th at 7:30 in the morning, right?
Yes. For board members.
For board members.
All board members
For
are
board
welcome.
members, yes. Please be there.
Yep. Thank you. Technology Committee, Mr. Miller?
Really not too much to report. We did have the technology forum for the open public last week. Wish we had more attendance, but I guess if we're doing well with it, I guess there won't be that much in terms of worried about it. So I thought it was definitely somewhat informative on certain things. I will say give credit to Joe Way for saving $250,000. That's a lot of money to be able to save in technology, but that's the way to be. Technology does save school districts a lot of money and a lot of it's a valuable resource. So I think we should definitely go further with it, and if you could save money even further, that'd be great. But I think $250 is great. It's really good stuff. So that's the only thing I really have to report.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Education Foundation, Dr. Herring?
Just two quick things. UCEF submitted a grant to a private family foundation for Wanton Creek's television broadcasting studio. Total amount requested is $2,235. They have received a grant in 2019 from this foundation, so they're hoping to again secure funding for this new project. Lastly, their next event is the second annual Beef and Beer, which they call Roast and Toast. This year, ECF will be honoring both Dr. Nick Corbo and Dr. Bev Martin. The event is scheduled for Sunday, April 26th at Clamors and Corsonia from 11 to 2. Tickets are $35, include lunch and 2 beverage tickets. Tickets are limited at the first 100 reserved, as there's limited space. And I'll send that save the date to everybody on the board. That's it.
And I would just add
That's
that
great,
the
thank you.
website and Facebook page will also include the Phase 2 brick project that is going to be started.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Herring. BCTC Joint Operating Committee, Dr. McClellan?
I'm passing a couple of things around for you to look at from BCTC. But we met last month, on January 22nd. We toured the carpentry and the wood technology program. And I am just so amazed at what our students can do. And when we do the tours, we get to meet students, like usually seniors that are there, and look at their projects. And it's amazing. If you haven't been to the BCTC, try to visit there, because it's just exceptional work, the work that they do. The thing I passed around, and Dr. Phillips had mentioned this at one of our previous meetings about the senior program opportunities that they're going to start. They're going to have that for next year. They're currently reaching out to this year's juniors, because it's going to be for next year. And the 3 opportunities they have is they can do specialized career training with supervised work experience. They could since a lot of the programs are 3 years to get the certification, they could start the program and then continue as a daytime adult, or they can enroll as an evening school student. And this is like for students who maybe aren't sure what they want to do, but it would give them a head start at whatever they might choose to do. Also, the other thing is about save the date for the STEAM camp. That's June 15 to June 19. They're highlighting constructions. They've already received funding for the next 2 years. And the other thing I passed around is, if you're not familiar with, I think it's 37 programs that they have. And the larger pamphlet that I passed around shows you all the different programs that they have, the areas, and then the programs that fall within those. And then just the The briefs from the meeting were in your packet last week, so you can, compare that to the other things that occurred at the meeting. Our next meeting is February 26th, and that's at the West Campus in Lewisburg.
Thanks, Dr. McClendon. BCIU Board of Directors, there will be a meeting of the BCIU Board of Directors this Thursday, the 20th at 6:15 at Berks County IU. We have a new legislative report. Township Borough Liaison, Mr. Chapina.
I have nothing to report. I don't know if you and Hunter want to report on anything from your discussions.
I'll say one thing. I have had an opportunity to talk to some of the supervisors with the township, and we're planning on having a discussion with some of their administrative staff at the township office soon, I hope, to discuss some codes issues relative to our property at Water Creek. So that's all I have. Relative to that.
I think also just to thank them for the meeting that we had with them. We met with Dave Spees and Joe Staub, and they were very gracious with us, and I think we're really blessed to have a team over there that's really excited to work with the district, and I think that we match that excitement on our own end with working with them, and I think that there's a lot that we're going to be able to accomplish, especially when they've come out of this period of transition that they're in.
I agree. I mean, we talk about a kind of a new era in township and school district cooperation, working together. We talked about considering a shared event at some point where we might profile some of the accomplishments of the school district, our facilities, etc. And just have them come in almost more of a social context. And I was very encouraged and just by how positive they were and how willing they were to kind of work with us. They're also, I think, possibly interested in using our facilities for some of their meetings because they're running out of space with the number of people who show up at these township meetings, that they're kind of running out of space, according to the fire marshals. Yeah. So we may be extending our facilities to them through policy, which will allow them, if requested, to use our facilities for those meetings. Superintendent's report, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburger. I wanted to just touch on, I know I sent this out to the board, but to sort of piggyback on what Dr. Winters talked about, we're really proud of our growth, our PVAS scores. There is some area to be gained for our achievement data, but we don't want to discount, we are doing okay. We're doing better than okay. Specifically, our English language arts. I met with the curriculum group and we wanted to answer the question that Mr. Fiddler had brought up. What is our plan for success? In summary, excluding grade 3, we're achieving at a higher rate than the state average. Now again, we want to be better than that, but we are still at a higher rate than the PSSA grades 4 and 8 in the Keystone Literature. We have a significantly smaller number of students performing at the below basic performance than the statewide average. The action steps that are in place to go forward, reviewing curriculum documents and analyzing alignment to eligible content PA core standards. The elementary curriculum is aligned and promotes access to all students to appropriate standards. There needs to be some more work done at the secondary curriculum to further review and adjust and align and prioritize the standards for emphasis. Vocabulary is an area of emphasis. Resources are being generated to support this work in the short and long term. Increasing phonological awareness at our primary grades to impact overall reading capacity for all students. Professional development has been provided. Ongoing monitoring and feedback on implementation is in process. As well as ensuring appropriate balance between fictional and informational text, providing opportunities for many reading and writing activities across all curricular areas. Providing opportunities for students to hone their decoding skills with texts that support our disciplines. In the area of math, excluding grades 3, we are achieving a higher rate than the state average for PSSAs in grades 4 to 8, as well as Keystone 1 Algebra 1 assessment. Notably, as a district, we have a smaller percentage of students performing at the below basic performance level than the statewide average, except grade 3. Action steps in place and moving forward, the alignment of curriculum instruction and assessment, reviewing our curriculum documents and analyzing alignment to eligible content and PA core standards, supporting differentiation and pedagogies that enhance equity and engagement, and analyzing summative unit assessments for alignment to eligible content and PA test design. In professional development, we're promoting the use of open-ended questions and appropriate levels of rigor, supporting mathematics and vocabulary, improving student engagement, the use of ongoing formative assessments, and ensuring the appropriate focus on the standards for mathematics practice. Data-informed decision-making, determine the most effective and efficient benchmarking tools at grades 5 to 8, determining areas of strength and growth, and determining root causes for these data points, as well as the science, achieving at a higher rate than the state average for PSSA science in grades 4 and 8, as well as in Keystone biology. Again, significantly smaller percentage of students performing at the below basic performance level. Action steps moving forward, aligning our curriculum instruction and assessment, reviewing curriculum documents, and analyzing the alignment to eligible content. Changing science units at grades 5 and 6 for improved alignment with content at the junior high level. Supporting differentiation and pedagogies that enhance equity and engagement. Continuing to deepen the teacher's understanding of FOSS materials and methods. Supporting science vocabulary for all learners. Improving student engagement, the use of ongoing formative assessments, as well as the use of data-informed decision-making, determining the areas of strength and growth, and determining root causes. I think we are making great work and great progress in PBAS. There is a more of a focused need on our achievement scores, and the district has a plan in place to move forward with that. Thank you. That is my report.
Thanks, Dr. Phillips. I just have two additional items before we adjourn. First item has to do with board member John Fidler. Mr. Fidler and I had a conversation this afternoon, at which time he indicated that he was considering resigning from the school board. I have received an email about an hour and a half ago at 7:22 this evening. It says, Dave, as requested, this will confirm my resignation from the board effective today. John. I think this is a formal resignation at this time. I was very saddened to have the conversation with John today. I was not able to convince him to reconsider. I wasn't able to convince him to give it a little bit of time. He was insistent that he was going to resign today. So with that, I recommend to the Board of School Directors that we accept the resignation of Mr. John Philbin on and doing school director effective today.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to see the board hold on this vote or vote no until we have a further discussion with Mr. Fidler.
Well, Mike, if I may, if that's going to be the desire, could we recess to an executive session for which we will return from this evening? And that way we can talk about it as a personnel matter to try and understand the issue or the questions associated here.
I'll leave that up to the board, but it'll be a fairly one-dimensional discussion without Mr. Fidler being present.
I do have some insight that I'd be willing to share, but I think this is a personnel matter in some respects. So I would agree with Mr. Aarons that it might not be a bad idea to give the board some insights, possibly in terms of the rationale for his decision, and then we could come back and take a final vote on that in public.
Do you want to talk about the other thing first? Because I think you said you had two. I don't know where the other thing is.
The only thing was that I was going to announce an executive session.
Oh, okay.
For personal matters.
So I motion that I asked the chair that we would recess into executive session, and I think Robert's Rules of Order is, I need a second, and you can just gavel us out.
Can we hold on a second?
Yeah.
Really quickly, because I know we're going to come back, but I just wanted to share something that was good news. I thought that Mark Ricketts, one of our teachers, wrote a kid's book, and it was on Amazon starting on Friday. for $9.99. Stories that make kids move, a read aloud, stories that kids move to, a read aloud and activity reference guide. So he's a phys ed teacher at Lorraine.
And I will say, he's had some other, he's been published before.
This one just came out Friday.
So we have a recommendation on the floor from Mr. Aaron's, and do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second.
So that you can just gavel us out to go to recess.
We are in recess, we will return for a vote. Thank you. Okay, we're going to resume the discussion. What we have currently on the table is communication for Mr. John Fiddler indicating that he intends to resign from school board effective today.
I would make a motion to table the vote that we have a motion and a second for regarding his resignation.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any board members that would like to be heard at this time? If not, I'll accept the motion for adjournment. So moved. Second. We're adjourned. Thank you.